Why is it that the game shows of the future always have to be so violent? Running Man, Death Race, and now Killing Room. Killing Room is an FPS for the PC that came out on October 20th, 2016 for $9.99. Does it have enough of a fun factor to blow a hole into your Steam library? That's what me and my critical eye zoom in towards today. So here's the basic premise of Killing Room. You're in a game show of the future where people fight to the death by going through a series of rooms filled with random enemies, guns, and traps. Now, you'd hope that the future would be a little less violent in its conflict resolution, but hey, you're not here to play peace treaty negotiator, you're here to blow chunks out of enemies and earn fabulous, unnamed prizes. No, seriously, they don't name the prizes. As to the rest of the story, actually, that was pretty much it. If you were expecting some kind of epic story out of a game named Killing Room, well, I have a nice opportunity to sell you on a site known as CSGO Lotto. Oh, wait, you're more intelligent than your average YouTube viewer because you're watching this video. My bad. Needless to say, Killing Room relies solely on its gameplay to keep you entertained. Now, I admit, I wanted the game to at least play up the game show element of the narrative perspective more. Sure, it does it in the gameplay element, as I'll reveal later on, but having an announcer in the background doing more quips than he was doing in this game would have gone a long way to keep me happy while playing Killing Room. Sadly, the game completely missed the mark. But okay, let's hit the main reason why you'd want to pick up Killing Floor in the first place, the gameplay. The idea here is simple. Walk into a room, face its challenge, and make it out alive to go to the next room. In a room, you'll have side rooms that you can go into to gather more supplies, or face additional challenges that you could choose to take on. However, every floor has a boss monster to face in order to go to the next floor, and a main series of rooms you have to go through regardless of the situation. You start the game with just a single pistol with unlimited ammo, along with a sprint ability to run from your enemies. As you go along, you can pick up a secondary weapon, and a third weapon once you hit a certain floor in the game. The shooting here is a mix-up of slow FPS shooting of zombie-like targets, aka they move like molasses, to running around trying to avoid damage like BuzzFeed trying to avoid good reporting practices. So, okay, how's the shooting? Well, basic. I mean, really basic. Look, we've come a long way from the days of the 1990s, and AI has gotten a lot better in most cases. Not so in Killing Room. The AI is not only basic, it's as basic as they come, sometimes only having one strategy or element at a time. Now that can work with the right combination of enemies in the modern day video game. See a game like Ziggurat, for example, where the configuration of those enemies make a huge difference in how you went about dodging. But Killing Room rarely does that. Sure, you'll get a room where you'll have a laser enemy or snowmen that can freeze you in combination, and that will provide a reasonable challenge. But for all of those, you have several rooms with sets of enemies that mindlessly wander toward you, with nothing else getting in the way. In short, those elements usually get boring really fast, because it's not really engaging you that well. The issue here is that, in my opinion, the game relies on its secondary mechanics so much that it overlooked the main core shooting gameplay here. By itself, Killing Room's gunplay wouldn't even be worth a mention. You've seen it in other indie FPS games before, and it's been done a hell of a lot better. However, it's elements like the traps within rooms that try to bolster that gameplay, and to some extent, it does. I'll start with the basic traps, the traps that you'll find in rooms while you're trying to kill other things. They range from explosive canisters that you can blow yourself up with, to the most deadly of them all, the bear trap. Why is it deadly, you say? Because you have to look down and hit E repeatedly in order to get out of it. If any ranged enemy is shooting at you or a melee enemy is close, it's pretty much death. And the way that it can blend into the background can cause a lot of problems because all of a sudden, you're trapped. I admit, I hated them at first, but I realized that with this gameplay, it does work because of the lack of speed in the gunplay for the most part. The game forces you to think about where you're going more than any other shooter, even a game like the new Doom, because one false step means taking a lot of damage or just plain dying, as opposed to, dying to the enemy. But what I appreciated more was the actual trap rooms. The rooms that actually forced you to time your jumps or your movement. Like this room full of deadly doors. Or this room that's pretty much a clone of a Wipeout stage. No, seriously, it pretty much is. Regardless, this actually forced me into scenarios that got my adrenaline pumping, despite the fact that sometimes the controls were a little bit too loose for what it asked me to do. They were simple, but it was a good change of pace. But I need to take a step back at this point, because I haven't talked about one of the major mechanics of the game, its RPG-like elements. At the start of each run, you're given a random character with 4 randomized stats: health, defense, stamina, and speed. As you play through the game, you can get items that will give you perks or boosts to those stats, which can be both positive and negative. Some of these items will affect the damage of certain weapons, while others will affect your abilities or cause you to see things in some cases. Take, for example, we're going to take this, we're going to grab that medical kit we don't need. I could get a bad item in return for popularity. Why not? You were not the first and definitely won't be the last contestant. You are hearing and seeing things. So I'll probably get strange. Well then, we have a pony. Do you want to name the pony? And we'll name it Clip Clop. It's probably glue now. Part of this item collection ties in with one of the major mechanics of the game, popularity. In the upper left-hand corner, you'll notice a value. That's my popularity value. When you finish a stage, your popularity value will determine how the audience sees you. If you're really popular, they'll give you good items that'll boost your stats. On the other hand, if they don't like you, you'll be stuck with more bad items that'll probably screw you over in the end. This concept was what drew me to the game, and in particular, how it was used for currency. See, you'll find vending machines around the map that usually contain consumables or things that you'll need, ammo, health, etc. However, they don't take money, they take popularity. So you've got to ask yourself, do you really need that health that may put you out of range of getting a good item? The risk and reward mechanic is intriguing, and to be honest, is the best part of this game. And the items that you can get really do some strange things, like I showed you before. It can force different strategies, like when I got an item that forced me to always run, which meant that I'd use up stamina quickly and would change between high speed and low speed instead of having a medium one. Now, I have to be specific here. This is item enhancers and dehancers and not weapons. Most of the weapons surprisingly feel pretty much the same, with the exception of the dual SMGs. AKA, aim for the head and shoot. Sure, there's some weapons with more ammo and less damage, but they don't feel that different in the end. And then there's the melee weapons, but don't use the melee weapons. You'll just take too much damage. Which is where the items start to fall a little bit short. Sure, the items are cool, affecting your stamina, affecting your speed, affecting all these different attributes. But it could have been so much better if it was used in combination of weapons, like adding another shot to a shotgun, or adding maybe the ability to get a 4th weapon during a run. So it seems like the game has a reasonable amount of items, even if the amount of weapons are lower tier. So does that save the game? No, it doesn't. And even though I just told you that the item variety was good, the rest of the variety in the game isn't. I hinted at the enemies before being a problem, but there's also the fact that room variety is a problem. For example, here, when I go into this big huge spiked room, into another big spiked room. The main problem here is the fact that runs end up not feeling unique even with the items, thanks to the lack of the enemy and room variety combined together. Sure, I can get an item that completely changes the way I play, but it doesn't shake the feeling that I've faced these same characters the 5th time in a row on the first floor. In fact, you'll get sick of the first floor entirely because A, it'll be too easy after going through it for the 100th time, but B, you can literally count the number of configurations of enemies and rooms on all of your digits. Contrast that with other roguelike games such as Enter the Gungeon and Ziggurat. Sure, they have a set number of combinations of enemies and room variety early on, but you don't run into the same configurations as often as you do in Killing Room. There's just enough of a variety there that the unique weapons and skills stand out even more and make you feel like this run is truly unique. The prime example of this is the bosses. In Ziggurat, the first floor can have 3 different bosses. In Enter the Gungeon, the first floor can have 3 different bosses. In Killing Room, for the first floor, it's always the same boss, who has a really basic set of attacks that make his fight rather easy. And due to this, the game loses its appeal very, very quickly. Sure, you can get farther and farther in the game, but here's my question. Why would you want to? Unlike Doom, unlike the original Wolfenstein 3D, the bells and whistles on top of things just don't distract from the main problems at the core of this game. But on top of that, the game is very mixed about its messages at times, and I feel like some of those gameplay decisions that they made were roundabout ways to balance out the game. Take for example what happens when you enter a main room. You lose popularity. In this game world, that doesn't really make sense. The audience would want the person to move on in order to get further in the game. Now, if I were to forego rooms for the main set of rooms, yeah, I could definitely see the crowd thinking you were a coward to not go in those optional rooms and get on your case. But if I only have one room at the start of a level to move to, why am I being punished? I feel like that it's that way because, well, it balances the popularity gain out for killing enemies and the like, which is not a good way of balancing in my opinion. The popularity mechanic was one of the coolest parts of the game, but I wanted it to be taken a step further. Things like shooting the camera messing with your popularity, yeah, that was cool. Now take it to the next step. What about implementing it so that the audience jumps in and asks you to melee enemies or kill only with headshots? Play up the game show aspect of the game. That's what this world is missing. Cohesiveness. I feel like I'm fighting in a series of corridors, but not in a game show format. These mechanics seem only to be loosely connected as opposed to weave together. And while each mechanic can somewhat work on its own, when it all comes together, it's a mess. Also, the game does have interactive portions with your viewers being able to vote at the end of the round if you decide to use their provided URL. Devs, this doesn't work. First of all, if you can name the URL, then it would be fine. But no one is going to type this string in. And let's be clear, any streamer will want to use their Twitch or YouTube account to grow, so I'm not sure this was the best implementation. Build in Twitch integration into your game, and I think things will get a lot better in terms of streaming. Now, one final note on the game. The graphics feel like they are store-bought assets, but to be fair, the game doesn't just throw a singular level together, and this is not an asset flip of any sort. It feels like they just didn't have the budget for a main artist. Thought and time went into the mechanics and the use of what I think are store-bought assets, even though I can't prove it. It's just something about enemy snowmen, worms, and zombies in the same world that just doesn't work here. But I have to question some of the choices here visually. For example, the Earth Stomp attack used by this enemy. Why make it clear? Why make it hard to see? I get it, you won't see a stomp attack in real life give out a green glow, for example. But here's the thing. This is a video game. It strains my eyes to try to see the stomp in this case. And in a game that's trying to go on action, why do this? Even with that said, I found myself feeling sick at times while playing this game. Turn the blur option off before you start playing if you do pick it up. But it's the combination of the assets here that make for a weird effect. There's something off about the color schemes, which seems to get worse when running. I felt sick. What really sucks about Killing Room in the end is that I feel like with 3 or 4 months of polish of new enemies, different layouts, and just more content in general, there could be something to pick up here. Sure, the AI is dumb as hell, but the ridiculous situations you can get into in the game can be really fun, especially if you have an audience to stream it to. It just doesn't have enough compared to other games out there, even at the $10 price range. Maybe over time this game can earn that, but for now, I'd hold off on Killing Room.